Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar. We'll then run through the UKMO Office Run, have a look at the 5-day precipitation and temperature, as it's looking quite likely we are cooler in the north, warmer if not a bit hotter in the south. Looks like most of the precipitation is going to be in the north and west, but it does look like perhaps through Sunday into Tuesday we could be seeing some rain in the south, even towards the London area, down into Kent, Essex, areas that are so dry at the moment. It does look likely we do now see some precipitation. The amount of precipitation and the widespread nature of it, we'll have a look, because there is still uncertainty with that. But it does look like there will be showers, maybe even some thunderstorms around, giving that very well needed rain. We'll then have a look at the mid to longer range, look at the GFS, GM, ECMWF and the Ensembles, as we are now on some of the runs starting to see a little bit of a signal of higher pressure building in towards the first third into the middle of August, and it could, and I mean could, be going very hot once again. Now, I know some people will be commenting saying, oh, it's just a few runs, just a few ensemble members, but this is exactly what happened at the start of July, and we know what happened 2 weeks later when we saw that incredibly hot air mass move up, giving us 40 degrees. We are seeing similar charts from the GFS specifically today in around that 10 to 14 day time frame. A push of southerly winds with high pressure moving to our east, near enough the same pattern that we saw in the middle of July, giving us mid to high 30s, and the upper air temperature is getting well above 20 degrees at 850 HPA. It does have some support within the ensembles, so we'll have a look in detail at what it is showing today and how the other runs do differ at day 10 and see what the most likely scenario is. So remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in description. So if you do start on the live radar, you can see there is quite a bit of precipitation around for some. You see this area of heavier rain with some small little torrential cells within it, perhaps some sort of bits of thundery activity as well. This was a large area of precipitation that developed across the Midlands last night, spreading northwards, and it gave quite a soaking for many areas, as said in the Midlands, northern England, through Yorkshire into northeast, and now into parts of southern Scotland. We saw quite a bit of rainfall there. We'll have a look at the past 24-hour precipitation amounts there, and you can see most areas saw a good few millimetres of rain, at least some areas seeing more. We do have some patchy precipitation elsewhere, but nothing too much. And that's the sort of signal we're going to be seeing over the next few days. A lot of showers around, mostly in the north and west, but as I said, could be moving further southwards and eastwards as well. If we do put on the current 2-metre temperatures, as I'm recording this in the middle of the afternoon, you can see it is pretty warm, especially in the south, getting temperatures back into the mid-20s, maybe 25, 26 degrees. Further northwards, much cooler, back down to the low 20s, high teens, but generally around average. And that's going to be a consistent signal over the next few days. You can see across most of Europe it's not too incredibly hot at the moment, but I suspect within the next 7 to 10 days that will start to change. Hot air does look likely to be moving back into many parts of Europe, and whether it hit the UK in around 10 to 14 days time, we'll have to see. That's what some models are suggesting. And if we do put on the past 24-hour precipitation, you can see, if we do zoom in, we do get it to load, sometimes it takes a little bit long, you can see how across the Midlands, northern England to the northwest, all the way up through Yorkshire, northeast England to southern Scotland, we haven't seen a massive amount of rainfall, but we've seen a good 5 millimetres quite widely, so decent amounts of rainfall. But in that southeast quadrant, we haven't seen a lot, and we do need it, and hopefully over the next 5 days we will see some. So if we do have a look at the UKV and see when and how big that potential rain is going to be in the southeast, you can see those showers spreading northwards, lingering a little bit through this afternoon, and you can see through this evening does disintegrate away, but still a few showers across northern England and southern Scotland. Through tomorrow, a similar picture, some showers across northern England, southern Scotland, but elsewhere it is pretty dry and it will be pretty pleasant. Some clouds around, but nothing too major. Beyond that, you do see a weather front approaches from the north and west, giving some more persistent precipitation to parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, and into parts of Northern England as well. With its weather fronts moving through, it could even reach eastern areas as well, but it does turn increasingly more patchy into just thicker cloud through the early hours of Saturday. And by Saturday afternoon, some precipitation lingers across northern areas, through Wales, parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing too crazy. But it's through Saturday into Sunday where we see some showery outbreaks, some heavy showers break out in the south, some heavier precipitation moving through, potentially even into the London area, East Anglia, South East England. Could be seeing some heavy precipitation. You can see it is quite convective of nature. There are areas that are seeing very little, others areas seeing quite heavy precipitation amounts. So we'll just have to see how it does develop. But that heavy precipitation does move through Sunday, so it will be quite a wet day there, looking likely in the south and the east. But I think a lot of people would agree that we do need a couple wet days here or there to make sure that we do try and avoid this drought conditions that we are seeing that are starting to develop. Beyond that, though, it does look a bit drier, and through Monday, we could even be seeing some more heavier precipitation in the south and east through Monday afternoon. Some very heavy precipitation there, could be thundery in nature, but again, it is convective activity, not a massive weather front. Yes, it is along probably an included front, but it is going to be patchy in its intensity. So hopefully it does remain intact, and we do see widespread, decent rainfall for these areas before it does eventually move away further northwards. And because the reason for that is the upper air mass is changing. Now you can see initially we see a bit of a cooler patch coming through Sunday, and then warm air approaches again, and it's that slight, subtle change in air mass, those colliding air masses that are producing this precipitation. And what we've seen generally over the last couple of days, and that we'll continue to see over the next 2 or 3 days before we reach the end of the weekend, is these air mass collisions are much further northwards, and that's why we're seeing the precipitation further northwards, but it does look likely to shift slightly further southwards, giving us that precipitation there. And if we do have a look at those max temperatures, it will also impact the surface conditions as well, but it still does look likely we will see some decent days as well. You can see this afternoon temperatures widely into the low 20s, generally around average 20 to 22 degrees, and by Friday it does look like temperatures will again reach those low 20s quite widely, but maybe even mid to high 20s for some. 25 to 27 degrees is possible in a few areas. So very nice day on Friday, and then Saturday, again, a very nice day for some. 26, 27 in a few areas, maybe even 22 to 25 quite widely as well. And as we head towards Sunday, you can see once again, very widely, pretty warm around those 20 to 23, 24 degree range in a few spots, but cooler towards the far south as we do have precipitation moving in. And again, similar on Monday, where it is cooler under the precipitation, but getting towards the low 20s elsewhere, as we still do have generally warmer upper air conditions. So it's generally looking warm, some rain around, could be some widespread rainfall as well towards Sunday and Monday, but it's nothing massively hot, it's not massively cold, just generally around or slightly above average. But as we'll see with the GFS now, the potential for well above average conditions is looking very, very possible as we head into the first third of August. So you can see high pressure over the top of us at the moment, but it's not particularly high pressure, so it does mean that there are a few showers around, as I said. Low pressures run in through Friday and Saturday in the north, giving precipitation there, but elsewhere it's pretty dry. Slightly cooler air mass move through for Sunday and Monday, and you can see we are sort of in between systems, and that allows showers to develop, convective showers, and that's why we are seeing that precipitation potentially in the south. There is a little bit of an issue with this latest GFS run. It does look like we do have a couple of the runs, a couple of the images, haven't loaded. So if you do see a little bit of flickering, that's because it's going to yesterday's run. But you can see, as we head towards the 4th, 5th of August, you see no real heat in sight. Low pressure to our north and our east, pulling in northerly winds. But it's this high pressure that very quickly takes over by the 5th of August, so around 8 days' time, and then it moves eastwards. And what does it do when it moves eastwards? It pulls up a southerly airflow. Now, we get one batch of southerly winds there, if we look at those upper air temperatures. Potentially the 15-degree isotherm there takes over the far southeast, 20-degree isotherm gets close, but it looks like there will be another round of this very hot, potentially very hot air, potentially moving up from the south. You see again another high-pressure system builds in. To our east, we pull up a southerly wind, and look what we get there. The 20-degree isotherm engulfs the south and the southeast. Again, the 25-degree isotherm gets close. Again, this is extended range, but this is exactly what happened at the beginning of July. So that's why we can't disregard it at this stage. We do have to very much look at this with like it could potentially come off, because this is exactly what happened, and the models slowly got on board, the ensemble members slowly got on board. So we have to keep our eyes on what is happening with this. This has been a theme. We have seen some runs showing this sort of pattern, but this is probably the first one I've seen where we properly get in that very hot air in once again. And you can see it on the temperature deviation. Look at that, 12 degrees above average, engulfing southern parts of the UK. It does eventually disintegrate this hotter air, and if some people enjoy thunderstorms, this would very much be a thundery breakdown, because you see a little bit of a low pressure system there is enveloped within that hot air, so it would be a major thundery outbreak. If you don't like the heat and you prefer some thunderstorms, this pattern would give the best of heat, but also would give some big thunderstorms as well. So if we do look at this GFS run at the surface, at UK level, and then we'll have a look at the surface temperatures as well. So if we start on the 850 HPA temperatures, you can see nothing too warm. Remember, average this time of year, sort of around 8 to 10 degrees at 850 HPA, so looking around average. But we do start to put in some warmer air masses in around 6th, 7th of August, getting that 15-degree isotherm in, maybe 16 degree. The 20 degree is just to the north of France, before it does get pulled away by slightly cooler Atlantic air. But you can see the warm air approaching once again from the south. You can see incredibly hot air masses are gathering. The 20-degree isotherm starts to push up from the south, and we see it engulf the UK. The 22-degree isotherm gets in. Very hot conditions, poor low pressure does eventually push it away. You can see a small low there, and that pushes that away. Again, no real point looking at this in detail, but if we do have a look at Cape, you can see there is some significant Cape there. Again, no point really looking at it at this stage, just because it's so far out, but you can see there is some significant Cape there that we, of course, would need to keep an eye on in the longer term if we did see this very hot air get wrapped up within the low pressure. But if we do run it back to when the warm air starts to arrive, you can see around the 7th of August, we're getting to around low 30s, maybe 31, 32 degrees. As we head towards the 8th of August, high 20s as slightly cooler air does move in. Similarly, on the 9th of August, start to rise again, 31, maybe 32. The 10th of August, even hotter, 34, 35 degrees. So we're starting to get towards that very hot range. Heatwave conditions widely, though, of course. And by Thursday the 11th, 36, 37. And by the 12th, we could be seeing again 34, 35, where it slowly starts to break down a bit. We can see 40 degrees across the north of France. Again, these are lower resolution operational runs in the longer term. So, of course, we have to add on a couple of degrees to this. And you can see by the Saturday, we would be much cooler with lower pressure moving in, so thundery activity. So you can see that we would, again, threaten that mid to high 30s range. Not 40 degrees that we have seen earlier this month, but still threatening that extreme heat level, dangerous heat levels of mid to high 30s on this latest GFS. As we see the GM, the ECMWF in a minute, they're not showing it at day 10, of course, because this is all happening day 10 to day 14, this heat, but they're showing the signal that we could see a similar pressure pattern in the mid to longer range around that day 10, with that high pressure wafting to our east, giving up those southerly winds. So, if we do have a look at what the GEM is showing over the next 10 days, again, high pressure over the top of us at the moment. Sliding low pressure systems in over the next few days, giving us some precipitation. As we head towards day 7, day 8, we see that northerly wind, but high pressure builds back in, and you can see it does move to our east at day 10. And what do we see? We see southerly winds. The 15-degree isotherm comes in. The 20-degree isotherm is just towards central and northern France. You look at the temperature deviation. We are getting towards around 8 to 10 degrees above average. And again, very hot conditions would start to be wafting up from the south. If we do zoom into the United Kingdom, have a look at the 2-meter temperatures. Again, trying to run it back, you can see we would start getting towards the high 20s there. And you can see low 30s across Central Europe. So if we did run this on another couple of days, I wouldn't be surprised to see these very hot air masses, the 18 to 20 degree isotherm, getting close by. So you can see how it's not the same as the GFS. The GFS, of course, does get that hotter air mass in, but the GM has a very similar pressure pattern from day 7 to day 10, with that high pressure moving to our east. So could we start to see the models holding on to something, finding something out there that could indicate we're going back towards a potential very hot spell. Again, with these sort of air masses, they will not last particularly long, maybe only 2 or 3 days, similar to what we saw in the middle of July. But if we did see it again, it could be very, very dangerous with it. The ground extremely hot and dry. We could once again see temperatures getting into the mid to high 30s, hitting maybe temperature records in a few spots once again, maybe even encroaching on that 40-degree range again, and we would see again the associated impacts on infrastructure, wildfires, things like that, if we did see this again. So it is worrying signs if this is a real trend and not just a one-day blip, and we will find out about that in the next few days. Now, if you have a look at the ECMWF, see how that does compare. Again, very similar over the next few days. Low pressure running in, quite unsettled there around in around a week's time before high pressure does start to build back in. Again, high pressure is building in, but differently to the GFS and the GM, it's building more over the top to the north and the west of us. So we actually are putting in a bit of a northeasterly flow, so much cooler, but that hot air is sitting over France. It is right close by, and all you need is this high pressure to move with the general flow in the north of the hemisphere, west to east, slowly move towards Scandinavia, towards parts of Central Europe, and we would start to waft in this very hot air very, very quickly. So again, slightly different sort of orientation of the high pressure, but the high pressure does build in, very similar to the GFS GM, just further westwards. So we aren't tapping into this hot air in the 10 to 14 day time frame. Could be slightly beyond that with this high pressure slowly moving eastwards. But the one thing that we are seeing consistent in all three models is this high pressure building in and hot air moving back towards Europe, because if we look at the moment, you can see there is no hot air towards Europe. It's all back towards the Mediterranean and North Africa. So that is one consistent signal, is that the hot air is moving back towards Central and Northwest Europe, which means any southerly, southeasterly, or even southwesterly flow would start to bring in very warm air masses back in again. Again, we don't only get the extreme heat with a southerly, direct southerly airflow, but still, even if we don't see the extreme heat in the longer term, it very much would put us on a path to get back into the very warm, if not hot, heatwave-like territories. So, if we do finish the video by having a look at the ensembles, you can see this is the latest GFS ensembles. There is a lot of scatter. We're going generally warmer over the next few days, peaking next week with upper air temperatures into the low teens, maybe temperatures into the mid to high 20s, maybe touching on 30 degrees in a few runs. When we see that slow northerly flow come in around 8-9 days' time, we do see cooler upper air temperatures. But then there is a rise towards around the 8th to 13th of August. Majority of ensemble members are around, if not above average. The average, or the mean from the ensemble members is around 12-13 degrees at 850 HPA. And we have quite a few, very similar to the operational run, bringing those upper air temperatures into the high teens, even low 20s. I wouldn't say there's massive support at this stage, but there is signals there of an increase in upper air temperatures and it turning dry. So that high pressure building in looks like majority of the ensemble members having building it in, but it just depends on the orientation. Luckily, it does look like there will be some precipitation over the next 5 to 7 days. As we saw with the UKV, could be some heavier precipitation on Sunday and Monday, but we'll just have to see how that develops and whether that consistent signal of that heavy thundery rain potentially in the south is still there in this evening's runs and in tomorrow's runs as well, before we can say guarantee that we're going to be seeing some moderate to heavy rainfall there. Again, if we do see that very hot upper air temperatures, you can see those temperatures getting up back into the low 30s, once again in the longer term, maybe even mid 30s again. These are low resolutions, they're not always going to pick up on it. And if we do compare it to the ECMWF ensembles, again, a similar sort of pattern, turning warmer in the short term for the first couple of days of August, turning slightly cooler around the 5th to 7th, and then returning above average. Not quite a stark increase as the other runs have it, and the other ensemble members, but definitely an increase. Nothing majorly hot, only a few ensemble members getting towards that very hot range, but still an upwards trend. So perhaps the ECMWF ensembles are slightly lagging behind. And to be honest, that is something we did see at the start of July. Now, again, I'm not going to say it's going to play out exactly the same, but we're already seeing some very similar parallels to what we saw in the start of July. The operational runs starting to pick up on very hot southerly winds. The GFS leading us with that as well. The other runs kind of showing it, but not 100% getting there, and the ensemble members having some hints of it, but nothing crazy at this stage. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this over the next probably 3 to 5 days if it is going to come off. But very, very interesting seeing this on the model output. We've had hints of it over the last few days, especially of pressure patterns, positioning of the high pressure, but this is the first time today that I've seen a proper run really starting to get that extreme heat back into the country. So we'll have to see how it does develop over the next couple of days. But for the time being, it does look generally around, slightly above, slightly below average at times. It does look like there will be widespread precipitation for some on Monday and Tuesday, and again, widely in the north and the west on other times. So it doesn't look too bad over the next week or two, but in that 10 to 14 day time frame, as we head towards around the 8th to 10th of August, we could be going very, very hot once again. So we just have to see how it does develop. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.